In 2004, filmmaker Morgan Spurlock created one of the most memorable modern documentaries, Super Size Me. Extremely popular at the time, something about the film was uniquely engaging, fun, and interesting, discussing a topic, health, relevant to all of us, engaging in a diet we all dreamed of when we were children, and examining a restaurant we all have a deep familiarity and sympathy with, McDonald's. In the film, Spurlock eats 3 meals a day from McDonald's for a month to see its effects on his body. He has to eat every item on the menu, and if asked to supersize or order an extra large order of fries and a drink, he has to do it. His goal is to see if after a month he becomes supersized himself. Spurlock passed away recently, which provokes an opportunity to reflect on his work. At the time the film was made, America was struggling with a crisis of obesity. The country becoming heavier by the decade. One of Spurlock's theses was that the fast food industry played a big role in this crisis. Historically, and as Spurlock points out in the film, diet changed dramatically from the 1950s to the present. From the ubiquity of home-cooked meals, changes in family dynamics, like fewer women in the home, resulted in an increased demand for ready-made meals. With increased prosperity came a greater prevalence of eating out, and with the rise of nation-spanning chains, people patronizing fast food restaurants. John Glove made an argument about the cycles of nations, exploring how a civilization achieves success and becomes prosperous, but then struggles with what to do with its privilege. Without the hardship of daily life, the human psyche seeks a purpose. Though this sometimes leads to the cultivation of intellect or aesthetics, it more often results in a greater occupation with the needs of the body. Most societies in history struggled with the simple goal of feeding their populations, the common people struggling with poor or unvaried diets. In traditional societies, the commoners subsisted on bread with little variety. In the 16th century, the King of France boasted about his subjects having a chicken in every pot, his country achieving a level of development where meat was available to the public. Though countries like Argentina and the United States have long histories of meat production, taking access to it for granted, this is an example of one of the luxuries of our diet that was impossible in pre-modern times. An innovation that radically transformed diet was refrigeration. Not only did it preserve foods long-term in the home, but it allowed fruit, vegetables, fish, and many other products to be stored and transported to consumers, the rise of the banana industry in the 1920s being a major revolution. In modern times, height has increased compared to the past, showing how much childhood nutrition and diet have improved. In the United States, with access to more affordable food, the paradox of abundance leads to an increase in serving sizes. Not only increasing the sizes of meals, the country gained an expectation that food should provide pleasure, not only nourishment. While servings increased in general, the best examples of this came in the form of supersized portions at fast food restaurants in the 1990s. In the United States, abundance thus led to a novel issue, with a post-scarcity society struggling with poor diet and obesity. Beyond these changes, in the 1990s, an important transition happened in the American food industry. Due to a fear over fat content in food, many manufacturers reduced it in their products. Yet this resulted in food that wasn't appetizing to consumers, leading to companies introducing added sugar, now possible due to additives like high fructose corn syrup. Sugar became a part of many iconic 90s brands, with it being added to many products that previously lacked it. In a great scene in the film, Spurlock sits with a nutritionist, and they create large piles of sugar to show how much the average American consumes. A key point is the invisibility of the sugar in our diets, with most of it coming from drinks. In the film, Spurlock interviews a patient going through bariatric surgery who struggles with his weight. Yet in the course of the interview, the man reveals his wife has come to give him a gallon jug of sugar water. He confides in Spurlock that when he stopped drinking these, his health improved, but doesn't recognize they're the source of his terminal health. So this is a counsel we can make in our time, to eliminate sugary drinks from our diet and observe the outcome. And then if more is needed, to try to eliminate all sugar and observe the results. In nature, sugar is extremely rare. Our ancestors infrequently had access to it, thus prized it when it was available. Yet this leads to our modern crisis of self-discipline, when sugar is ubiquitous in our time. Sugar is similar to alcohol in that it can't be metabolized by the body, so it goes to the liver, turns to fat, and is gradually broken down by enzymes there. This is the origin of non-alcoholic fatty liver, which anywhere from a quarter to a third of Americans suffer from. This condition can progress and even become cirrhotic if maintained for too long, just like alcohol. One analogy is to think of the liver as the poison processing organ of the body, the origin of its ability to regenerate and regrow. From this perspective, we can view sugar as a poison like alcohol, something we can consume but should do in moderation. Aristotle had the idea of the golden mean, that every virtue was a balance between extremes of too much and too little of a trait. Thus, enjoyment isn't something we necessarily need to vanquish, but to maintain health, we need to find a balance between it and wellness. One of the major fears Spurlock develops late in his experiment is how bad his liver is becoming. The doctors become alarmed and tell him he's on track to seriously harm himself, and he needs to stop his diet. If you watch Spurlock in the film, you can see that while the food at McDonald's isn't healthy, the main culprit of his liver problems comes from his always ordering sugary drinks, as opposed to water or diet ones. Among the complaints Spurlock makes in the film is a lack of nutrition facts provided by McDonald's. As he states, advocates of free choice in diet are fine, but run into an impediment here, where the consumer should be provided information about the health of what they're buying. This is one of the ways the documentary affected society, with nutrition facts added to fast food restaurants and elsewhere since the 2010s. Another film, The Founder, portrays the rise of McDonald's as a company. Michael Keating plays Ray Kroc, the businessman who expanded the McDonald's Brothers restaurant into an empire. The title is a source of ambiguity, with Kroc taking credit as the founder of the corporation, confusing the role of Richard and Morris McDonald and its origin. The McDonald's brothers were great restaurateurs and innovators. They developed the Golden Arches, an iconic symbol of the restaurant. They prized convenience, pioneering the idea of the drive-up or drive-through restaurant. To maximize efficiency and affordability, they created a simplified menu. Using the idea of Henry Ford's assembly line, they developed a kind of industrial model of food production. They carefully planned their restaurant's layout, placing the stove, grill, fryers, and storage in places that would minimize their workers' movement. Their innovations allowed for the production of fast food. In The Founder, on his first visit to McDonald's, Ray Kroc places his order and is stunned by how rapidly he receives it. He's incredulous that it could be ready so quickly. One of the achievements of the brothers is the recipe for their perfect fries, something iconic to Americans. They're so celebrated that almost a third of all potatoes in the United States are fries, with McDonald's being the single largest buyer of potatoes in the country. Ray Kroc was originally a traveling salesman, going across the country to California for an order he was skeptical of. The McDonald's brothers purchasing 8 multi-mixers, milkshake machines for one restaurant, with each machine able to make 5 milkshakes at once. Seeing the success of the restaurant, Kroc develops the idea of scaling the business into a nationwide enterprise. A big conflict in the film actually involves the milkshake machines. While they took longer to make, the McDonald brothers wanted to make real milkshakes with ice cream for their customers. Meanwhile, Kroc thought they should embrace a synthetic, pre-made milkshake mix made of artificial ingredients. This also forced the company to rename the drink into shakes. Ultimately, the brothers compromised on their goal of quality, Kroc favoring the goal of efficiency and scalability, if they sought to turn the restaurant into an empire. As some have said, if you listen to McDonald's investor calls, the company is really in the real estate business as opposed to the food business. One of the pioneers of franchising, Kroc came up with a concept for how to expand. Rather than own all its restaurants itself, McDonald's embraced a form of outsourcing. The corporation buys land and buildings and creates a template for the restaurant. Franchisees can then become tenants of McDonald's, paying rent to the corporation and effectively running their location at their own expense. What this did is ensure consistent revenue for McDonald's, even if individual locations failed. The onus was put on franchisees to make their individual locations work and to manage the daily struggle for profit, absorbing the stresses of their locations personally if they were unsuccessful. For more on this, Robert Edwards goes into detail on the struggles of franchisees on his channel. Given a system to follow, in theory, if the location is profitable, both the company and franchisee prosper. However, profit margins are often thin, with the system designed to help the corporation. While the franchisee benefits from McDonald's branding and advertising, they aren't able to change the menu or provide special offers to entice customers. The most important variable behind their success is something they can't control. As Edwards says, their location. One of the controversies of McDonald's franchising was the repeated problem of their ice cream machines. The machines have to go through a nightly cleaning process. However, if this fails, the machine becomes non-functional, often angering customers. The frustration of this is the restaurants can't reset the machines themselves and have to contact an external contractor to do this. When journalists inquired into this, they found it was a kind of conspiracy at the expense of franchisees. McDonald's corporate had outsourced the maintenance of the machines to the contractor Taylor Company for profit, then put the cost of paying for the artificially created issue on franchisees. In the period after World War I, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, emigrated to America and applied his uncle's system of psychology to the world of capitalism. This was the beginning of modern marketing and public relations. Bernays knew how to sell, and his ideas were soon integrated into the advertisements of all companies. Bernays knew a product could be sold if it was associated with an emotion, aesthetic, or ideal. An example of this was Bernays' Torches of Freedom campaign, which associated women's smoking with feminist empowerment. Prior to this campaign, smoking was taboo for women, limited only to men. After his campaign, however, women's smoking in the country doubled. In Super Size Me, Spurlock discusses the concept of brand imprinting for later actuation in life, associating a company with positive childhood memories to reap the economic results of this in adulthood. Spurlock identifies the Happy Meal, McDonald's play areas, the Wholesome Clown, and animated programs as efforts to associate McDonald's with happy childhood memories and comfort. A child in school, eating McDonald's and getting a toy with their parents, comes to associate the company with the love they got from mom and dad. This instills a lifelong loyalty, familiarity, and positive emotions with the company, distinguishing it as one of the most successful brand imprinters in history. In 2010, Michelle Obama embarked on a campaign to improve health in the United States. Her campaign focused on young people, reducing childhood obesity, encouraging exercise, and offering healthier choices in school. School meals were adapted to include more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Though well-intentioned, the effort was a failure. Students threw away the healthier foods as they weren't appetizing. The foods were too expensive for schools to afford, and supporters of individual liberty criticized the program harshly. Since this effort, no politician has attempted to address the obesity epidemic in the United States, which has progressively worsened with each decade, along with its associated health conditions like diabetes, diabetic neuropathy, high blood pressure, and heart disease. In the 2010s, the healthy at any weight movement began to develop, presenting an idea of body positivity and even discouraging doctors from counseling their patients of the benefits of weight loss. At the same time, a new wave of healthy food developed. However, an issue has been its cost and its apparent limitation to the upper class, who have more leisure time for fitness. If we inquire into this, we find that while health is an issue for all classes, the greatest burden is suffered by the working classes in the United States. While obesity is accepted today under the guise of body positivity, in the past it was viewed as one of the 7 deadly sins, one of the vices that injured us in life, harmed our bodies, and estranged us from a right relationship with the divine. Dante, the poet of the Divine Comedy, had a great insight into human nature and psychology. In his work, The Inferno, he places the gluttons in the 3rd circle of hell. This was one of the higher tiers, those suffering from the vices of bodily temptation, lesser faults compared to the true vices like violence and betrayal. In the Inferno, justice is impartial and acts through a force called contrapasso to suffer the opposite. If one overindulges in food, one gives the body more than it needs and harms it, affirms the material as more important than the transcendental, and denies we have a higher human potential. In the 3rd circle, Dante meets Ciacco, one of his countrymen from Florence, who is a glutton. Ciacco abides in a kind of animalistic state, in a slop of mud, ice, and sludge. Symbolically, this represents how his actions have harmed him. A bleak figure, he recalls the kind of figures seen on My 600-Pound Life, a program that shows the greatest casualties of the American obesity crisis. There is a tragedy to Dante's hell, showing the sad fates of those who lack self-discipline. Dante's psychology portrays a very different moral system than our time, viewing gluttony explicitly as a vice, not a preference. In Dante's philosophy, the glutton is a sad figure. All the injury they do to themselves. If we analyze the legacy of Super Size Me, the film had several tangible effects. While at the time McDonald's defended its policies, it gradually shifted to a new model. It and other fast food restaurants eliminated supersize, added nutrition facts on their food, and offered more alternatives. At the same time, the film failed to transform the culture of the United States, and personal responsibility triumphed in the national debate, with individuals remaining in control of their health. Yet we see the consequences of this conclusion. The health crisis Spurlock discussed in his film has not improved but gotten worse, with the United States becoming a supersized nation.